Welcome everyone. Thanks, Hamza. So Hamza's going to go on first. I'll just say a few quick words just to open and explain what's going to happen for anyone that's new. In fact, I do see a few interesting names out there and a few people coming back over and over again, which is great. So yeah, for those of you that don't know me, if this is your first time, my name is Barry Cranford. I'm the founder of the LJC and run a recruitment company called RecWorks. So we do recruitment. So if anyone's looking for a job or looking to hire or build teams or anything like that, give us a shout. But we also do loads of other cool stuff as well. The LJC's like the flagship community, I guess. We founded it back in 2007 and it's now something like 8,000 people. But we do 14 other groups. So things like Meet a Mentor. If you're interested in finding a mentor in anything, to become a CTO, to become a speaker or anything like that. We've made something like 3,500, excuse me, introductions through that. We've got the Aspiring Speakers group and a load of other things. So if you're interested in anything that we do, please talk to me afterwards. Anyway, we've got, today is the Lightning Talks event with the LJC. So this has come about because we've seen so many speakers come through the LJC over the years. We started it over a year ago now. As an initiative to try and get people anything from learning how to get started to starting to progress into conferences, just to test new material and anything, but it's really trying to help ultimately new speakers to get started. So if anyone's interested in speaking at a future event, then please do let me know. Anyway, that's it from me. I'm going to hand over to our first speaker of the day, who is Hamza. Hamza. Sorry, I didn't practice your surname here. Bellmellouki?
Yes, it's Bellmellouki, yes.
There you go, there you go. I'll hand over to Hamza now. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Barry. So let me share my screen. Can everybody see my screen? That's cool. Cool. Great. All right. So, hello everyone. My name is Hamza Bellmellouki, and I work as an IT consultant at Octo Technology. Today, we're going to talk about mutation testing and how it can help us diagnose test quality. So before talking about mutation testing, I'd like to talk about code coverage. The problem with 100% code coverage is it doesn't confirm that we have tested every line and path. All it proves is that we have executed every line and every branch. So a simple example is when we have unit tests with the omitted assertions and verifications, code coverage remains constant with or without test assertions or verifications. So with that said, we can't rely on code coverage to measure the quality of our tests. Now you may ask, how should we measure the quality of our tests? We can answer this question by asking ourselves another question, which is, if we make a semantic change to our production code, will our unit tests fail? Well, if the answer is positive, that means our tests are good. Otherwise, we need to improve our already existing tests, maybe even write new test cases. So that leads us to another question. How do we know which tests need improvements? We need to mutate the semantics of our code. For example, negate an if statement, remove a method call, and with each one-by-one semantic change, we run our unit tests. And if we don't get failing tests or tests, then we need to work on our test suite. Now, each semantic change is called a mutant, and you might ask, what is a mutant? It is a very small changed version of our production code. Mutants are said to be killed when at least one of our test suites in the test suite fails against the mutated program. So the software test suite can then be scored by what is called the mutation score, and the mutation score is just the percentage of killed mutants divided by the total number of mutants multiplied by 100. Now, we don't want to create mutants manually and run each of our tests against them. That's time consuming, not to mention all the possibilities we need to cover. So that's why libraries like PtTest exist. The library will alter the bytecode, create mutants, run the corresponding unit tests against those mutants, and generate an HTML report showing weekly tested pieces of code. And now let's see an example of it. Okay, the following is an HTML report generated by PitTest. We can see that we have 100% code coverage. However, the mutation score is very low. Let's see why. So here, PitTest shows me weekly tested pieces of code. It does that by mutating code and running tests against it. Here, we have 3 mutations that survived. The reason they survived is because we have forgotten to add a verification or assertion to our tests. So after adding the forgotten verification and boundary test, mutation coverage should go high. And here you can see the killed mutation. That's good, since the quality of our tests now are measured by the percentage of mutants they kill. So we can add new tests, change existing tests to kill mutants. And yeah, one thing to keep in mind is that mutation testing can be highly time consuming to run. So if you're working on a big project, you want to break the mutation tests into small parts. Well, this is the end of it, a 5-minute talk. I hope you have learned something relevant today. And if you have any comments and questions, I am all ears. Thank you for listening.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Hamza. Does anyone have any questions at all for Hamza on the presentation?
I have.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead first.
Yeah, go ahead. It's okay.
When you're running the mutation test, so do you tend to do this when you've just added new tests or new code? Like, what sort of time periods do you find you run them, and how do you then make sure you find time to go back and improve your tests? I think that's what I find in a lot of the teams I've worked in is once you've written the code and delivered it, it can be quite hard to find that time to go back.
Yes, definitely. I do that often when I write test cases, or I run the mutation testing, and after that I got a report which shows me where I can improve on my tests. So I do that much often, and also I do it with legacy tests. I mean, to improve their quality and to assess their quality instead of relying on unreliable metric like code coverage. It's just an execution of paths and branches. It's not a reliable metric as management thinks. So yeah, that's the thing. I hope it answers your question.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Hamza. And Splintos, did you have a? I've got Splintos.
I have another question apart from what he did, because I didn't understand anything from what he said, because I'm just a beginner in Java. I just wanted to say, I mean, I just asked a question about what do you think in case, you know, because we both, me and I and Hamza are Moroccan, and he knows much more about what we get here in college in whatever what has to do with programming and so on. I mean, do you think that I mean, I don't rely on school, I don't rely on any private school, no matter what it's called, but do you think when in case I practice every day 1 hour, maybe 2 hours, I might improve that fast? Or do you think, shall I consider shall I take 1 year free in order to become a little bit more intermediate like you? I don't know exactly what level you are, but I would love to improve in somehow, you know. I don't know exactly. What do you think? I mean, do you think it's 1 hour a day is enough, or maybe shall I do 2 hours just in order to? I'm already done with OOP, and I don't know exactly what to do next. And I'm kind of confused between desktop and web, but I think I would rather go with web, which is more common in Morocco and everywhere, I think so. But the most important thing, what do you think? What shall I do exactly to improve, just from your experience? Because you are somebody who is self-taught. It means a lot for me, because I would love also to be a self-taught student, or no matter what we call it. That's all about. Could you advise me?
I think all software developers are self-taught. So I would say join communities. I always say that. Communities, I mean, you learn a lot from communities. The LJC community, I've learned a lot from it. So join communities, there is Reddit communities, Stack Overflow communities, and not Stack Overflow communities, but other user groups also, local user groups. So yeah, that's my advice, and interact with people in the communities. Yeah. So
Okay.
and it's better than 7 hours in a day. I mean, doing it consistently. So just keep up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. Okay.
Yes. And good luck.
Thank you, Barry, for giving me the chance to speak.
No worries at all. Splinter, so I think if you pop if you've got a Twitter or LinkedIn or something in the chat bar, you may find that some other people on the call might be able to offer some additional advice. Like, obviously it's a very, very open question as to the best thing to do. 100% agree with Hamza in that joining communities is a fantastic way to get a real broad idea and speak to a lot of people. But you may find some other people will speak to you directly. So.
Of course, I'm so eager to know how projects work. You know, I've no experience in any company, and I'm so eager to know how they work. I mean, how it looks like to work with a team. What should I mean, what each one does, and so on. That's all about, and I'm so curious about it.
All good, mate. All good. Put your details in the chat, and I'm confident you'll find some people will help you there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Brilliant. Okay, so thank you very much, Hamza, for the first presentation. Then next up we have Parker. Parker, whenever you're ready.
Yep, let's see the tech all immediately go wrong because, well, that's life. 1 second. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yep. Oh, that did not go as I was hoping. Okay, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so my talk today is a little bit less technical, a little bit more perhaps applicable, whether you're at the start of your career, whether you're at the point where you manage an entire bunch of people, because all of this right now is based around work, stress, and actually taking a break from work. And for me, kind of taking a true break from work means not having Slack on your phone, not looking on LinkedIn, and taking some time away. And the reason I am so incredibly passionate about this right now is that these words in front of you, if you can get a list together for me, I'll get back to you as soon as possible, are the first words I said after coming round from a stress-induced seizure about 3 weeks ago. It's been a very interesting time. So let's get into it. The new normal, because of COVID, because of lockdown, because of remote working, has become this remote status where we're always available. And actually, I miss my commute. The value of a commute is not being crushed up against a bunch of other angry people who don't want to be going into the office on a Monday. It's the psychological break between being at home and being at work. It gives your brain some space and some separation. You actually, once upon a time, had a time where you could switch off from work. And once you were out of those doors, you got a break. The problem with most of us working in IT or working in tech is now we're always available. And despite the fact that we have more flexible working, there are more rigid expectations. People are supposed to be online earlier. They're expected to be online later. And this has had issues for both people like us who work in intangible industries where we can work from home. And you've also actually had issues for people who worked in the service industry during the lockdowns across the globe, because managers would ask people to cover extra shifts. And when somebody went, well, no, I don't want to. And the managers would go, well, what else are you doing? You're locked down. And the thing is, because this became expected and because this became the new normal, we've got so used to not having a break between work and home that there are no boundaries. I'm currently moving house. I'm actually sat on a bed and doing my best to keep pillows out of the shop behind me. I can see people in their homes. I can see people with virtual backgrounds. And as wonderful as it is that we get to work like this, it makes saying no harder. And the stress levels that come with that are real for both those at the start of their career who feel the need to push and to always be available so they can make progress, and those who are at the top of the chain and feel like they've got the entire weight of the world and of the business on their shoulders. So what I actually wanted to talk to you about today, before getting onto a little bit of a rant there, was stress and what that can do to you in the short term and in the long term. Because stress, when it impacts us, increases cortisol, it increases adrenaline, and in the short term, this is what powers our fight or flight reflex. It's what kept us alive when we were living in caves. But now we're living in a pandemic and we're still trying to work and we're still trying to progress our careers. And in the long term, what increased adrenaline actually does is slow you down and completely wreck your immune system. It slows down the speed in which you heal. It can give you digestive issues with gastric ulcers and other cramps and other inflammation. It can increase the bad cholesterol that's in your blood, which has a much longer term effect and takes far more work to reduce. And none of us want to go on a diet. We've got enough stress on right now. Chocolate should be our friend. And then you also do get into things like blood pressure issues, coronary heart disease, and heart attacks. Or if you're me, you can be dramatic and seize whilst you're in the middle of buying your lunch. That was an interesting time. But these are all the real things that the stress in your head can do to you. We look at stress and we go, oh, well, it's a bit of anxiety, it's a bit of worrying. And it's really not. This is kind of the first thing that the BBC, Psychology Today, and the AARP will point at you. If you want links to the studies, it's wonderful, as it is terrifying, and we can go through this, but not today. And with all of this said, it's become really important that we manage our anxiety, and particularly what I considered or learned to call unlocking anxiety. And that actually being the anxiety that comes with the world kind of trying to go back to its pre-pandemic status. For people, that means going into the office. It might mean crushes on public transport where you feel too crammed in and too close together. For people, it might just be they've not had more than 5 people around them for the last 18 months. And that's a big change to get used to. And all of this can have a knock-on effect on people's output, their work levels, their health levels. So as junior employees, we need to learn how to kind of raise these with our managers without feeling like you're going to be dismissed, like you're going to be feeling like you're being made silly. Everybody goes, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And then, the anxiety hits and you goes, oh, well, I'm probably asking a stupid question. They're probably not going to want to answer that. But junior employees, the ability to speak up and providing the environment for them to speak up is what we at mid and senior levels need to be doing. Because if we can't have these conversations, you're going to end up with all of these far more physical symptoms, and people are just going to be working less. Trust me. So the main thing for the people at the top who do have teams to look after is considering how stress manifests in your team. Does it come through as people being shorter and more clipped when they're communicating? Are they not wanting to come into the office and pushing back against hybridized working? Is it their overall code quality has gone down? Is it that tests are being skipped? All of these things right now, if something is impacting the performance of your team, assuming that it's something physically wrong with their code, it's probably not the most helpful thing. Sitting down and talking with your team and finding out what is worrying them and giving them the space to articulate what is worrying them. Because some people can't even say why they're stressed until they're given that space to pause and to think about it. So from the bottom, please take this as a sign to talk to your managers if you're worried. And from the top, managers, for the love of God, would you actually look after your people and ask them? Because I've not worked a full week for about a month now, and I hate how much that's impacted my productivity. My manager is actually being a complete angel about it, but no, everybody is so lucky. And for that reason, I'm coming back to this. If you can get a list together for me, I'll get back to you as soon as possible. That's actually what I said, if you want to be very specific, when they asked me my name. I answer to a lot of my names and I answer to a lot of different nicknames. So to me, I'm still thinking that was a fairly rational response. But I'm a project manager, and that is your standard project manager response to any question. You don't pin yourself down and you give yourself a little bit of time to think. And if I'm doing that immediately after I come around from being unconscious, we've got to talk about the difference between performative well-being and systematic change. Because right now, all over LinkedIn, you'll see people kind of doing, Nike gave their head office staff a week off. Sky Betting and Gaming gave their entire team a day off. These very performative acts of well-being are great and they seem fantastic in the short term, but these people on their days off will still be checking Slack, still be checking LinkedIn, still be making sure they're up to date on the company Twitter. And these performative acts of well-being are not the same as systematic change. Systematic change is reducing your team's workloads, giving them the space and freedom to express where they need to work to be at their most productive, and giving them the time to figure out what their life looks like coming out of a pandemic, which, as we go back into winter, is entirely likely to resurge if everybody's really optimistic about things going back to normal. I hate to break it to you, but temper it down a bit. So if we're really getting into the end of this, we need to talk about prevention versus cure as well, because the cure are these like sideline days off that don't really make that much difference, and prevention are these systematic changes that give people the space to be their best selves and give them the space to clock off. We live 168 hours a week and most of us are contracted to do 40 and are currently delivering 60. This is not the way things were meant to be. It really, really isn't. So for me, I'm 3 weeks and counting now from my seizures. I'm waiting on CTs and MRIs and EEGs, all of the stuff that they now have to do to find out why it happened. And that maybe wouldn't have happened if my stress levels hadn't been through the roof for the last 6 months. I'm not saying that is the case. There may be something that they find. They may equally go, yeah, we can't figure out why it happened and it will never happen again. But right now I am evangelizing, taking a break and taking a proper break, getting rid of all your apps, getting off of LinkedIn, stop worrying about your company, because we work in tech. And to be honest, unless you are working on the kind of tech that keeps a surgical room going, none of what we do is life or death. But if you say that to my manager, he may kill me. So if anybody actually wants to see more of the detail of this, I documented most of the experience on my Twitter, mostly because when I first hit my head, I couldn't keep my memory. So Twitter became my diary and my place to come back to. LinkedIn, haven't kind of been as public about this, but I am very much on developing your teams and keeping your teams happy so that they can be performant, because all we want is the best for people and the best from people. And I do not have a website, because if I try and code something, I will break the internet. I have tried once and it did not end well. But on that note, any questions?
Thank you very much, Parker. Yeah, does anyone have any questions or comments at all?
Yeah, for sure. I think, sorry for interrupting, first of all. Secondly, from my experience, I've been through so many cases where I got kind of, I felt like overwhelmed and I couldn't realize where I am exactly. Sometimes I kind of, like I want to hit myself and something like that. But the thing is, I've learned something from so many talks in TEDs and so many talks from so many doctors that I visited, that instead of, you should change your way of thinking about stress. Instead of seeing stress as something that's kind of gives you pressure and relying, doing a relationship between stress and every bad things. You should, in this case, change this way to another way, which is you should embrace stress, which comes like whenever you stress, it comes kind of a habit for you to prevent you from something which is worse. You should change your view to stress. Once you change it, you won't have the issue. I'm sure of that, because I was in your boat and I was in Germany. I don't know exactly where I live in, and I was living in Germany, and everybody knows that German people are so kind of robotic, and I was so overwhelmed. I couldn't stand what they do for sure. I still can't understand how they work, because people like that are eating kind of meat at breakfast just to be powered. There are so many words that has to do with power like coffee shop, coffee posh and coffee something. No, but I know it's all about giving your best, but you should change your view. As I told you, you should change your view. You should instead embrace stress. Okay, once you embrace this, you will love it to stress, because if you don't stress, because there is two ways, there is two cases. If you don't do anything at the day, it's much worse. It's much worse than if you did something at the day, because once you do something, you feel that you achieved something, okay, and you feel a kind of fulfillment. But in case you don't do anything, for sure you're gonna feel something which is more negative than that. Okay, that's why I advise you just to embrace stress and just to change your view to stress. See stress is something like you prevent, because there are goals. First of all, there are timely goals that should be achieved, and when you work on those goals step by step, the more you work on them and the more you improve, the more you feel less stressed. Which is the opposite. If you don't do anything, you will feel more stressed and more pressure. You know, that's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just interrupt here as well? Thank you for your comments,
Yeah.
Splintos. Parker, do you mind if I go to Helen? I know Helen's got her hand up as well. Helen?
I was trying to unmute and for some reason I just couldn't. Firstly, I just want to say thank you for sharing something incredibly vulnerable. That was it was beautiful and hard to hear all at once, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that, because I know how hard that would have been. Second point I wanted to make was just at me next time. So many of your points, I was just like, oh crap, yeah, that's yep, fair point, yeah. And I felt myself like nodding along, and it made me realize something that I should be doing and that I'm not doing, and that is taking a freaking break. And I'm not doing it, and I'm a sod for not working at weekends, but doing stuff, stuff, right? You understand stuff. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you for reminding me of that and bringing me back down to earth, even though it was with a little bit of a thunk. It was much appreciated. So fantastic talk. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And I actually enjoyed giving it more than I expected to.
Good. I hope we see more then.
One more question. One more question that we've had in from Alex that I'm going to go through. And in fact, two people reminded me of this while Parker was speaking. I should have said something after Hamza's talk. We have a feedback form. I've put a link on the chat that you should all be able to see. So a huge part of getting started in speaking is getting feedback. It's really interesting to hear. It's hard when you start speaking. It's like throwing something over a fence and you don't really know how it's received the other side. So to give speakers an idea that, yeah, I loved that bit, or that bit was great, or I took this part from your talk, or something like that, is just amazing when you first start getting speaking. So if anyone's happy to add feedback to the form, that would be amazing. Really appreciate it. So yeah, sorry, I didn't say that after Hamza, but the form is there. So if you could add any feedback for Hamza or for Parker, that would be amazing. And finally, Parker, if you don't mind, one more question, which was from Alex, and I thought was quite an interesting one. What can you do as a junior employee rather than management to change culture?
So I would actually say for this one, if you're lucky enough to have a manager that you get on with, stick your head above the parapet and go, I'm worried about this. If you have weekly or monthly one-to-one feedback sessions, that's a great time to do it. Also, I've never actually seen anybody go, if you ask, can I have a word? Can I have a moment of your time? Can I discuss something that's worrying me? If they say no, you've got a much wider problem than just that one workplace issue, but ask. I've never, ever had somebody kind of shoot me down for kind of raising a concern, because dealing with something when it's in its early stages, it is that prevention rather than cure moment. Because when it is just a little something, your team can rally around you and they can give you that support. If you're working remotely, you can also kind of get that feedback. You can actually get that sense of community. And it's much better to do it sooner than later. I if I handled stress like a normal person and had just dealt with this by eating choux pastry for about 2 weeks, that would have been fine. I would have much preferred to not end up with stitches. So please go and ask the question. And if they go, what brought this up? Tell them an idiot on the internet and point them at me.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to say also that I'm actually having a day off. My new company has actually got unplugged days, so I don't actually have to do any work today, but this is a pleasure. So thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Parker. Okay, brilliant. So, and I think there's some comments as well there from Maria, which I'll leave you to read through, Parker, on the chat. So, final talk for today is Charlie. Charlie, are you ready? You all set? You good to go?
Yeah, I'm good to go. Just need to share the screen and I'll show you what I've been up to.
Good stuff.
Okay, matey. Can anybody see this or? Yep. Okay, this is the address book app, and if you were here 2 weeks ago, I went into the front end of this and described what the front does. Then I ran out of time, so what I'm going to do today is to describe to you the second journey. You'll see these print labels. It takes about 20 seconds or so. It should come up with something in this corner. Come on. There we go. So these are the address labels. So what it is I'm taking you through a deep dive through that print mechanism. So I've shown you the front end, so I'll show you the back end now. So this is just something to aid me rather than go to the code directly. It's just something where I've done some work previously, and so I've got it all together. This is the file that is, see the come on, machine. See this here, DDR4. So this is the address 4, row 1. These are all replaced in this document to generate the PDF. The PDF is generated using Puppeteer. This here is the mapping between the front end and the back end. So you see there's a header HTML, which is just straightforward HTML body FTL, which is FTL stands for free marker template markup. So that is that file that I just showed you. Footer HTML is just /body/HTML. And then there's the array of items. The array of items consists of an input CSV. I chose CSV so that I could use special characters and so forth in the mapping between key and value pairs. And then there's a findings text which isn't used, so we'll just forget about that at this point. So this is the general array to PDF, which is effectively that array you've just seen to a PDF file. And what it does, it calls this convert. Convert does many things, but what it does is convert the array of elements from that data structure into a system of stuff. Well, it's this input FTL essentially. So it goes in a main loop and generates many input FTLs, and then generates a PDF. So here you go. Like you generate an output file plus I. So that's counting to generate the HTML, and then what it does is it bungs it all together into an output.html. So you get like many outputs all bunged together, and then it does a published PDF. Now, the published PDF is something that drives, I'll show you the call, node index.js. So what it's doing is it's setting up the file structure. So it's doing a chmod a plus xr index.js. So it's allowing it to be run. You can't run Puppeteer as a super user, so you have to add your own user and then run it under that user space. So I've got it so it's removing the PDF. Then I've got it doing a su user. Then it's running the node index.js, and then we have an output file which is test.pdf. And that's it. And then it exits the shell. Here we have the Puppeteer, the index.js. You see it loads in. So you have to have these values like no sandbox, disable set UID sandbox, and it does a Puppeteer launch. What else does it do? Browse a new page. These are things that I don't really know. I just picked it up from Stack Overflow, and I had to modify it with things like these catches to get it to work. And in the end, it does a page.pdf, and that's when the generation is done. You see some of the stuff earlier on, it's loading Chromite. So that's why it takes so long, because it's loading effectively a browser into memory. And is that it? And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, does anyone have any questions then for Charlie on that talk? Feel free just to unmute your microphone. I think we might be good.
Yeah, sorry. So I have a question. I couldn't understand exactly what's the purpose of that thing.
I can show you a quick page. See here, look, this is 2 Docker containers. So what it is this address label Docker container calls out to the container 1, which is the documentation engine. That structure that I showed you is what's transferred, and it's the post mapping general array to PDF. So that's what's called from the address, and it does this service convert. And this service convert contains the things that I just mentioned, which were essentially something that converts that data structure into things for the free marker calls. So the first part is free marker, then the second part is Puppeteer. The Puppeteer does the HTML to PDF. Does that make sense?
I mean, just in order to understand, I'm not having so much idea about Dockers and Kubernetes, but thing is it about printing a page, an HTML page? Is it about that?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. What's the difference between what you did and about clicking on any page and clicking control.p, like printing? What's the difference? Or maybe using any.
Because in web apps, what you tend to do is generate a PDF, and if you generate a PDF, I can show you the compass. So this documentation engine also has, see, it's general too. Also records the printing, so that you know that when you generate a PDF for printing, who did it and what the exact content is. So see what I mean here? It says who, and that's the Docker container ID with the user ID. At what time? So you get that as well, and then you get your what was input, and this is that's the body FTL, which I mentioned before, and then you've got the array of items, which is you can see as having those key value pairs. Does that make more sense? Or it tends to be a standard thing you do for web apps is you don't print directly. What you do is you produce a file and then allow them to print it off. So once I've got the file, you say, well, that's the end of my journey. It's up to them to print it off. See what I mean?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. I got it. Okay, thank you so much.
Any more?
Thanks, Plintos. Thanks, Charlie. Anyone else have any questions there for Charlie? I think we're good.
I think that was a bit more difficult than the previous one. The previous one was more sort of closer to the front, and I think people understand more front end type stuff, you know. Okay. I think back end is very difficult to get across, you know.
Yeah, it's do you know, it's always good, it's always interesting to see things in action though, to see actual code and get that here. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing.
Oh, thank you, Barry.
So for everyone else here, thank you for coming. You are very, very welcome to come and present one of your own at one of our upcoming sessions. We really like the variety. Anybody is welcome with anything that they would like to share. We do have a workshop that we're now running. I really should have the link prepared to that. I might find that and pop it in the chat bar there. But Parker actually finished the workshop yesterday. So yeah, thank you very much, Parker, for being the proof in the pudding there. So if you want to come through, it's designed to be something that gets you, if you're sitting there and thinking, I'm far too nervous to say anything, or I'm happy to speak, but I've got nothing of any interest or nothing that anybody would be interested in, then feel free to check it out, because we've basically learned, we've done, I think, 40 something of these events now. I've interviewed a bunch of conference speakers, keynote speakers, and we've been running these events for over 10 years. So we've seen all these people go from never speaking before to just becoming like keynote speakers. And it's interesting how many people go through the same mental challenges in terms of feeling that they could never do it and being extremely anxious and overwhelmed at first, but then gradually getting into it, seeing that they can do it, finding themselves in it, starting to love the buzz that comes after it, and then progressing all the way up. So yeah, so we've learned a bit about how to help unlock those things from the experts, and now we're just trying to share that with new people. So if you're interested in signing up to that, I'll tell you what, I'll send everyone a mail with the link, because right now I'm sure I'll never be able to find it, but I'll get something out. So if you're interested, you can sign up for that. Yeah, I've been through one of them, waving Barry. Hello, Manny. Why isn't your camera on? Where are you? I'm down at the bottom. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Manny is one that's been through the LJC. Loads and loads of people have. Trisha G famously came through and gave a talk, and she's spoken a bunch of times to our group about initially being pushed into giving her first talk, but obviously we all know how well she's doing now in the industry, and many more. So yeah, anyway, I'll stop talking at this point and say thank you once again to our speakers, and thanks for everyone for joining us today. And we will see you in the next one.
Sorry to interrupt. Just I don't know exactly what to join the Java communities. Is it about Meetup? Is it a Meetup? No.
Yes, absolutely. The LJC is run mainly on Meetup, and the events are run through Eventbrite.
Okay.
So I could probably get that pretty quickly.
I will be so grateful and so thankful for you.
There you go. So if
you go, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All good.
Let me copy it.
Brilliant. Well, I'll
Okay,
leave that.
Barry, just one more thing.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
You said something about RecWorks being a recruitment agency as well.
Mhm.
Do you mind if I send you my CV, or
Absolutely.
do I send it to you, or do I send it to Dom?
Yeah, yeah. Send it across to me, and I can distribute it internally, and yeah, deal with it from this end.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'll put my. Yeah, so that's me. Same for anyone. If anyone's looking, anyone's hiring, please bear us in mind.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.